Welcome back to the Stay Broke podcast. Today I'm joined by Aaron Wright, a former pharmaceutical entrepreneur who built and sold healthcare companies before launching a second career in experiential business. Aaron is the owner of iSmash Wake Forest, holds the rights to iSmash across North Carolina, and is now expanding into Charlotte. Aaron, welcome to the Stay Broke podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
We just like to start off simple with introduction, who you are, where you're from, kind of the short version of how we got here today.
Yeah. So I'm a local guy. Lived within about a 50-mile radius of Wake Forest my whole life. I grew up in Franklinton, which is turned into quite the booming little town now. Went to Carolina, went to pharmacy school at UNC back in the 90s. And then my wife and I met at UNC. We got married right out of school and then moved to Wakefield and raised our family there for the last 25, 28 years.
Awesome. I'm excited about today because I don't know very much about either of the industries that you've been in and about you personally. So we got a lot to learn today.
Yeah.
We've been to iSmash a couple times, and I've been trying to get somebody on that's part of a franchise because I don't have any experience with franchise. And it was cool. Last week we had a guy come on, and he talked about being in the ground up of building a franchise with his friends. Mm-hmm. He did You Break, I Fix, and now they're doing what is it? Jeff's Bagel Run.
Okay.
So they're doing the same thing over and over again as a group of buddies, and it's pretty cool. But that's a little bit different than running one. And yeah, there's a lot of questions about it, but also the healthcare industry. My wife works in it, and even with her being in it, I still don't know a whole lot about it. So how'd you get into that? Well, I mean, I know you went to college for pharmaceuticals, but how'd it go from there?
Yeah. So my dad was a retail pharmacist, and he worked at a traditional independent drugstore in Henderson, North Carolina, and so I was always interested in pharmacy. I grew up around it, but I was much more entrepreneurial. And so he said, "Well, if you like pharmacy, why don't you figure out how to use pharmacy to be an entrepreneur?" So that was kind of the mindset I went to college with, and found a company while I was in college called Mass Drug. They're based out of Henderson. They had a bunch of retail stores, but they were getting into long-term care at the time, which long-term care is not a traditional drugstore like you would think of, but it's a closed-door pharmacy that fills prescriptions for people in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Okay. And so, you've got a nursing home. It might have 100 patients in it. That particular type of pharmacy would fill all of the prescriptions for all of those patients and deliver to them every night. And so I got into that with Mast right after I graduated in 97, worked there for 4 or 5 years. And then my boss at the time and I left and started our own long-term care pharmacy. So we had the long-term care pharmacy. We had 3 retail stores and 2 durable medical equipment shops. But the long-term care was our primary business. Okay. So over the course of about 4 years, we ended up servicing about 120 facilities from Virginia to Florida. We were doing over 2,000, 2,500 prescriptions a day out of that pharmacy. And then ended up having a couple of different companies that were interested in what we were doing, and ended up selling it to Omnicare, which is now CVS, back in 2003.
Okay.
So I've always been an operator at heart. Love running operations, love figuring out how do you make it work, how do you make things go, how do you improve processes, that type thing. That's
the stuff that gets my blood going in the morning. I know that.
So to me, that's what's fun. And that's kind of how it brought me, full circle to iSmash.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit then. When did you realize that you had this like entrepreneurial spirit, like as a kid, or like when did that kind of hit you that you weren't like everybody else, I guess?
Probably 4 or 5 years old, I'd say. I remember being at home at the house we lived in at the time in Franklinton, and I'd take an old Coke bottle and take my wagon and fill it up with water and dirt and fill up those Coke bottles and tell people I was selling oil. Which is kind of crazy. Nobody ever stopped once, but my Uncle Larry did, and bought one from me. But I guess it started there, and then the whole lemonade stands and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I'm from a real small town with like not many resources, like 700 people small.
Yeah, that's about how Franklinton used to be.
And that's what I'm wondering. I know Franklinton was a tiny town when you were growing up in it, but did you know about all the resources around you when you were growing up? Like, did you see opportunity even though you were from this tiny town?
No.
So,
back then, obviously, no internet, no nothing. The only thing you knew is what you were physically able to see.
Yeah.
And I guess the biggest thing that changed me was going to Governor School. So Governor School was a summer program for kids all across North Carolina, to be able to go and I went for math, but they had they had natural science, they had social science, they had math, they had arts. And really, when I went to Governor School, that was the summer before my senior year, I just decided there's a different world out there.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than what I was used to. There were people who were just so smart and so creative and just things I hadn't necessarily been exposed to.
Yeah.
And so that was when I pretty much decided I wanted to go to Carolina if I could get in, which I did, and try and figure out things for myself.
Yeah, I know. I have a similar story. I mean, different, but similar in the sense that I went to boot camp when I was 17 between my junior and senior year. And that was the same thing for me. It was like, holy cow, there's a whole different world out here.
Yeah.
And like, there's a lot of different people too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, and then as I started to get into psychology classes, learning about the fishbowl effect and then all that stuff. And it was just like, so I'm just curious, because where I'm from, like we had Pittsburgh south of us. That was about 80 miles away. Mm-hmm. And that was like the closest, like, real universities. We had some smaller universities around us, but there wasn't opportunity. And like, there wasn't any other entrepreneurs really around me. It was all farmers. So trying to find figuring out, did you feel like you fit in or with the rest of the people around you, or were you kind of lost through school? How'd you do in school?
No, I was, it was great. I had 3 other guys that I met at Governor School that all ended up going to Carolina. And one of them I lived with all 4 years. But the other 2 had other friend groups. And so we all kind of came together. So at Carolina, I lived with 12 guys. We had a 6-bedroom duplex, so 6 bedrooms on each side. So it was like a little mini fraternity. I never did a social fraternity at Carolina, but we had our own group, and 9 of the 12 of us still today, text on a regular every day, like multiple times every day, on a text thread. So, no, I had my group kind of when I went in, and, obviously made other friends outside of that group. But we've been thick as thieves since day one.
That's awesome. Building that camaraderie, finding those like-minded people. So a topic that keeps coming up, not just here, but everywhere right now, is education and the value of education over skills, or skills over education. Obviously you got into an industry where you have to have the education to be able to move forward with it. What's your thoughts on the education system? Is it necessary to be an entrepreneur? Is it valuable to go to school today? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So my thoughts are, I'm a fan of both. I think you can go to a trade school, you can go for plumbing, electrical, whatever you want to do. And in today's world, you're going to do really well for yourself. If you're an entrepreneur, you can use that pathway to be an entrepreneur. School I'm also a fan of, not necessarily because of what you learn in the classroom, but what you learn outside the classroom. So you learn how to interact with people that don't think the way you think. You meet friends, you create experiences. So, I see both sides of the picture. I think going to school is fantastic. I think you learn so much about yourself. You learn how to grow up. You learn how to live on your own. You learn how to do your own laundry. You learn how to figure out what you're going to eat, how to feed yourself. If you have to work, you work and you make money while you're in school. But it just teaches you so much outside of the classroom. On the science side of things where I was, there was a particular, there was information we had to learn in order to be a pharmacist. But, there's a lot of stuff where, if you're a psychology major or history major, you're learning things, but normally that goes and you apply it to something different. Maybe you become a history teacher, or maybe you go to law school, but it's not as, I guess, concrete as what pharmacy or medicine or dentistry would be.
Sure.
But I see advantages to both, and don't feel negatively towards anybody who chooses whichever path. It's whatever they want to do and what fits them.
Awesome. So let's talk about the exit of your business, or the sale of your business. How'd that decision come about, and kind of what was your process?
Yeah, so I met a guy, a couple guys that work for Dunning Capital, which is a boutique investment firm here in Raleigh. Started chit-chatting with them. Our business was growing so fast at the time, we were trying to find money. In the industry we were in, growth is expensive. You have a lot of upfront costs that you have to put out before revenue starts coming in. You've got accounts receivable you got to deal with, you got inventory. And so we were trying to find money. And in talking to these guys, that's kind of what they did. So they helped us put together a book, went to a bank, were able to get very favorable lending terms through their help, and were able to get a loan and a line of credit to help us be able to rotate through and continue growing. So through that process, Paul was like, y'all got a great business here. You're growing crazy. He said, I think this is something that you could probably sell. And at the time I had two business partners. One was about 25 years older than me. One was about 15 years older than me. And I was 29 or 30. And the thought had always been the older partner would retire, younger two would buy him out, then the middle partner would retire and I'd buy him out. We just run this thing forever. But long story short, we had some offers that came along at crazy multiples. This was 2006, 2007, before the crash in 2008. And the multiples were just too good to walk away from. And so we ended up selling it. And and then, literally the next month, the older business partner and I started another company that catered to the industry we had just been in. So we started kind of a specialty PBM, which is a pharmacy benefit manager. It's a little hard to explain, but it's the network that allows retail pharmacies or any pharmacy to communicate with the insurance company. Okay. So it's kind of the pathway so when you go in and you give your pharmacist your insurance card, they punch in your information. Yep. It sends a message electronically to the PBM, and the PBM sends back and says, for Randy, for this prescription with his insurance, his copay is going to be $15.
Right.
We created that for the long-term care industry.
Okay.
And so that, again, kind of blew up. We grew it to about 900 customers nationally. We had customers in 49 of the 50 states.
Wow.
North Dakota, surprisingly, you have to be a pharmacist to own a pharmacy in North Dakota. At least you used to. So there's not like Walgreens, there's not CVS's. At least it wasn't back then. It was all independents. Anyway, long story short, we ended up growing that business. Funny, kind of a side note is, so with that business, there's a delivery component to it. And so we created a logistics company, and we had about 2,500 couriers nationally that could make a delivery within 2 hours anywhere in the country. And so this was pre-Uber, this was
ahead of your time.
Anything.
That's cool. So you had warehouses all over the place? Or
no, so the model was this. Like, let's say you've got a nursing home in Tampa, and my pharmacy was in Raleigh, and I had a patient who went to the dentist and needed a medication that day. I obviously couldn't get it from Raleigh to Tampa, Florida. So what I would do is I would call Walgreens in Tampa and have them fill an emergency dose. So they would fill 6 tablets, and they would charge my Walgreens credit card. Then I would have to call a taxi or a delivery driver to pick it up from Walgreens and take it to the nursing home, because the nurses didn't have time to go pick it up.
Right.
But it was my job as the pharmacy. It was my responsibility to get them the medication. So that's what I had to do. And so, when we would start service with a new nursing home, I would have to go into that town. I'd figure out what kind of delivery services they had. Do they have taxis? Do they have couriers? If not, I'd call a local church and find, somebody who wanted to make deliveries on the side for 20 or 25 bucks. And we decided if we had to do that, everybody had to do it. So why not put a platform in place to handle all that for them?
Yeah.
So we did that. Again, we had about 2,500 couriers nationally that were making deliveries all over the place. We'd call them. It might be 8 o'clock on a Saturday. Hey, I need you to go to Walgreens, pick up this prescription for John Smith, take it to Hillside Nursing Home. And they would do it. They would send us a bill. And, so we ended up writing 150 checks a week to all these different couriers all over the place. And we said, well, there's got to be a better way. So we put this network in place, and all of the customers that were our PBM customers started using us for that delivery. And, then I decided if we can deliver prescriptions, we can deliver anything.
Yeah.
We can deliver shirts, we can deliver paint, we can deliver TVs. So by that point along the way, we had sold a majority of the company to a private equity group. And I really wanted to grow the delivery side of things. I wanted to, I was having meetings with Best Buy and Home Depot and Jimmy Choo and Michael Kors and all these different major retailers. And the private equity group didn't really want to venture outside the healthcare space.
Okay.
And so, that was in 2013, 2014, we ended up parting ways and kind of went from there, because I didn't want to just run the business and maintain it day to day. I wanted to grow it and figure out how to really do it. And so, we just agreed to disagree and moved on.
Well, yeah. That seems to be a common theme here. I know I have that issue too. It's like building the business, fixing the problems, expanding. Like, I'm all in, but when it's time to just run the day to day, it's hard for me to keep motivated on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you continue after the courier services, or
no,
did you have to kind of let that go?
Yeah, no. So the company kept it. We parted ways. I took some time off. My kids were young at the time, so I was able to, take them to school, pick them up from school, take them to soccer, take them to dance, all that, and played dad for a couple of years, and then got back in, started doing some consulting, started doing some work in other healthcare related areas, and kind of did that for about the last 10 years until I found iSmash back in 24, I guess it was.
Okay. Yeah. It looks like you bounced around some of the different pharmaceutical companies around here. Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. Yeah. I noticed you've worked with a couple that my wife's worked at too. Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that. It was funny, a complete off track story, but she was in college when we met, and she was going for business, and we were driving to the mountains, and we drove past this huge building, and it's now IQVIA. Back then it had a different name. Yeah. She's like, and we were stopped in traffic right in front of it. And she's like, man, how do I get a job in that place? And then like she graduated and they just happened to come to town and her friend from the college set her up with an interview.
Oh, wow.
Her very first job was in that building.
Oh, wow.
So that's
Very
what brought
cool.
us to Raleigh. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the pharmaceutical industry has helped us out a lot.
Yeah. It's very strong here in the Triangle. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. What about all the stuff going on with like the pharmaceutical industry? Do you have any thoughts on like the high prices and people going to Canada to get their stuff, and now what Mark Cuban's doing with all the online, trying to really the cost plus drug stuff with trying to bring the cost back down?
It's tough right now. I mean, healthcare is the only industry I can think of where technology improves and prices go up. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with PBMs that I think are increasing prices way more than what they should be. Some of the work that I did in a consulting role was with a company out of Charleston that helps self-insured companies better manage their prescription drug spend. And it's really eye-opening, all that goes on behind the scenes to unnecessary costs that are layered in that, it's like birds on a line, and you add an extra bird and you add an extra bird, and there's a little more cost and a little more cost and a little more cost. So pricing could definitely be less expensive. At the same time, pharmacies are getting squeezed so much. And I haven't been in it in a long time, but the role that the pharmacist plays in today, it has always been the first line of healthcare. If you grew up in a rural town, or even in downtown Raleigh, and you go into Hayes Barton, the first thing, if your kid has a rash, you're going to do is probably take them to the pharmacist and ask them, what do you think about this? What is this? And so they're really the first line of healthcare. And pharmacists are the only profession that don't get paid for what they know. It's what they do. So you go to a lawyer, they get paid for what they know. You go to an accountant, they get paid for what they know. You go to a pharmacist, they only really get paid for what they do, which is dispensing prescriptions.
Right.
And so I'm sure the American Pharmaceutical Association, or whatever associations are out there, have tried for years and years and years to get pharmacists to be paid for more. And there's been a little bit of that. You've got clinical pharmacists that rotate in the hospitals now that are on the teams that help doctors recommend drug therapies and that type thing. But if there was a way for pharmacists to get paid for what they know, it would be helpful for them particularly, because dispensing day in and day out is just, it's a grind, and it's tough.
Yeah.
And you hate to lose that local resource of your retail pharmacist.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, it's like you go to a doctor's office or an urgent care. It's like you never know who you're talking to, where they're at in their career.
Sure.
And they'll just write you a prescription. But my go-to is always asking the pharmacist, talking to them about my allergies, telling them what I got going on. And I'm going to trust what they say over whoever wrote the prescription. That's just what I've learned along the way.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, doctors are obviously extremely knowledgeable.
Sure.
They might get a semester or even a year-long course in pharmacology, pharmaceutics, whatever it may be. Pharmacists go for 4 years. And so every day it happens where a pharmacist will catch a drug interaction or, incorrect indication or something along those lines where, it just got missed, or the doctor just didn't know, hey, this person's got an allergy to amoxicillin,
right,
and can't take it. So, but the pharmacist will catch it.
Let's go to why did you choose a different industry? If you know how to go in and make money hand over fist in an industry like that, build it, grow it, do all the things you need to do, why walk away from it and move on to other things?
Just a different challenge, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. I did a lot of consulting with different companies, some in logistics, some in healthcare. And then my youngest daughter graduated high school in 24. And I decided I need to figure out something to really jump into with both feet full time. And so, you know, I was looking at different franchises. I'd never been a franchise proponent. My mentor was never of that mindset. So I kind of took his, but the more I researched it, the more I decided, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for it. And so I looked at a number of different industries, I guess you could say, from a franchise perspective. Found iSmash. It was brand new. It was in the entertainment space. And it's just fun. Like every time somebody comes in, you know, 99% of the time they say, we'll be back. That was fantastic. And you don't have the day-to-day headaches, the struggles, all that goes into working in healthcare. You know, at the end of the day, when you go home, every person who came through your door had a great time. And it's just a different mindset. You go home, you know, feeling good instead of feeling, you know, sad or depressed or mad or angry because you couldn't get an insurance company to approve a particular medication for a patient you know needed it. You're not waiting for doctors to call back to refill prescriptions. It's completely different. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, it's just a lot more fun.
That's cool. I want to get into iSmash, but you touched on something that I definitely don't want to skip over. You talked about a mentor. Mm-hmm. Can we dive into that a little bit? How important was having a mentor in your career?
Extremely. Extremely important. Having somebody that can kind of shape the way you think about things. You know, every person has their own mindset. They have their own way of doing things. But when you can have somebody say, you know, just kind of give you, especially early on, structure and principles, I guess you could say. Number one for me has always been the customer comes first, customer experience. Whether you walked into a drugstore, one of our drugstores, you walk into iSmash. You should be treated as if you're the Queen of England, or the King now, I guess. And that's just how we've always been, is take care of the customer and everything else will fall into place. But having a mentor, I feel like is extremely important. It was very beneficial for me, until it wasn't. Yeah. And so unfortunately, he and I kind of had a parting of ways right around the time when I left the delivery company. Okay. So that was unfortunate. We had been friends and worked together for, from 95 to 2014, so almost 20 years. And was almost, you know, like a second father almost. And then stuff happened and, you know, I just made a decision to walk away and be done. Yeah. Yeah.
What, we're in this internet age where everybody knows everything. There's all these gurus that can tell you how to live your best life. Mm-hmm. And I think people get confused on what you look for when you're looking for a mentor or somebody to kind of guide you. How did you find a mentor, or like what principles were you looking for?
You know, at that age, I don't know that you know what you're looking for, to be perfectly honest. You know, you want somebody who is gonna do the right thing, I believe, and you know, faith-based principles are important. Moral principles are important, and just being, at the end of the day, being a good person and doing what you think is right, not necessarily what you might be in your best interest. So, you know, just making sure you're doing what's right has always been the biggest thing for me. Yeah. And whether it's running a business, raising your family, teaching our kids principles, you know, you want to do what's right.
Okay. All right. iSmash. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Definitely interested in this. I saw it coming to town. There was an axe place there before. It just one day shut down, and then I see iSmash showing up in there. So been hoping to catch up with you at some point to talk about it, because like I said, I don't know much about franchises, and interested in these types of businesses because so when I lived in Wilmington, there was a group of kids that, as their senior project, they started a froyo place, and it exploded, right? They blew theirs up, they sold it off, and then next thing you know, there's 19 brands of froyo popping up on every street corner.
Sure.
And then overnight, it was gone. And then, you see these businesses pop up that are like kind of, they catch on real quick, they're trendy, and then they die off. And I think some of them are like the axe throwing that blew up everywhere. And then the places that only did axe throwing, they've kind of gone away, and now it's turning into, they'll include it with other things. So I don't know. I'm not saying that iSmash is that type of thing, but it kind of seems to follow that. Do you feel like it's a trend, or is this a long-term plan? And why iSmash?
Yeah, great question. I don't think it's a trend. And that was one of my first questions when I started. And my wife, that was one of her first questions is this something that's going to go away in 5 years? So iSmash started in Rochester, New York, by a guy named Steven Shortino. And they opened 8 years ago. And every year, their profitability has grown. So 2025 was better than 2024, which was better than 23, which is better than 22. So they're just growing and growing and growing. He's changed locations once to get bigger. They're in the process of doing it again, or either going to open a second location, or may do both. So the growth has been consistent and constant year over year. So for 8 years, it's been there and it's constantly growing. So I don't think it's a one-hit wonder, flash in the pan. I think it's going to be around for a long time. It's new, obviously, for the most part around here. We're the first one in the Raleigh area to open. And it's just different. We have 4 smash rooms where you go in and take a baseball bat, a sledgehammer, crowbar, whatever tool we have, and you break glass items like plates, vases, coffee mugs, beer bottles, whatever it might be, appliances, or electronics, like an old Keurig machine, VCR, speaker, computer keyboard. You smash those. We have car windshields that we get, and people can smash car windshields. We've got appliances like dishwashers and ovens that people just take a sledgehammer and just go to town on. And it's so cathartic. Like people just absolutely love it. And like I say, at the end of the day, it's fun. We also have 2 blacklight paint splatter rooms. So you go in and the lights are out. You put on these black lights. All the paints are neon. We've got 7 or 8 different colors. So when you go in, you get a package. Every person gets a canvas. And then you go in there and you just have a ball. You paint each other. You paint the walls. You paint your canvas. We had a group of girls come in this weekend, high school girls. I think there were 6 of them. They ended up with more paint on each other than they did on their canvases when they walked out. So It's just things you've always been told not to do. Don't break this. Don't get the walls dirty. Be careful. Don't slam your dishes in the sink. You get to do all the things you've always been told not to do in one of our rooms.
Yeah. Interesting. I know my kids love it.
Yeah. I've been in a couple times.
We haven't done the paint room yet.
Yeah.
We still got to get back and try that. So you're looking to grow. You got the rights. Well, first, so franchises. Like when I started looking into franchises a few months ago, It's like there's so many out there. Like people think of the big ones, the big ones you see driving down every street. That's what people think of. But there's so many small franchises out there in different states that you've never heard of, never seen. And you start looking online, you can go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole trying to figure out what's what. So did you use a broker to kind of find your iSmash? Did you do your own research? How'd you figure that out?
Yeah, I didn't use a broker. I just found them on my own. I get these, business, for sale business broker emails, multiple times every day, and just happened to see it one day. And so I started looking at it and I was like, this is interesting. So at our location here in Wake Forest, we have the smash and paint. The third leg that most of the other iSmashes have is the axe throwing. We just didn't have enough room in this particular location to do all three, and so we just went with the paint and the smash. But yeah, I found them, started talking to them. It was early on in the process. I think at the time they had maybe 6 locations open. This was June of 24. So started talking to them, did a virtual visit where they did a walkthrough of their location. Kept talking. One thing for me is I wanted the rights to North Carolina, to be able to grow, to have multiple locations. Went up to Rochester and did a site visit, which was really interesting just to see it in person. And yeah, I just decided, this is kind of where the route I want to take, and really wanted to be at the factory. Having grown up in, or raised our family in Wakefield, we were at the tumble gym all the time with my 2 girls doing gymnastics. We were at the soccer fields playing indoor soccer with my younger 2. So, the factory came along right as we moved into Wake Forest back in right around 2000. And so, it was the destination, the place I really wanted to open the first location.
Yeah.
And so when the axe throwing place moved out, it just kind of all aligned for us, finding iSmash, getting the deal done there, and then, the space coming open at the factory.
Yeah. Sounds like you did a lot of due diligence, kind of didn't force it, waited for things to fall in place.
Yeah. Try to do as much homework on it as we could. And, ended up pulling the trigger, and, so far it's been great.
Yeah. I know I'm guilty of it, but I think a lot of people do it where they see an opportunity and they don't want to miss it. So they jump into it way too fast without actually doing their due diligence ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, and now that I've been through that a couple of times, that's something that we try and help people with. It's not doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're heading to Charlotte. You're building a place in Charlotte now.
We are. We're, have secured a location. We're getting into the construction phase. The goal is hopefully be open April-ish, if possible. We're just about through with permitting, and construction's getting ready to start ramping up.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. We appreciate everybody for watching. We appreciate the growth that we're seeing. We're getting amazing guests. We still need to get a little bit more reach to keep this momentum going. So help us out. Drop a comment, like, follow, subscribe, share if you love the content. Help us continuing to get amazing guests with amazing stories, and help those stories get around the world like they should be. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
The thing I hear a lot about franchises is, don't do it. The fees are too high. The startup's too high. How was iSmash to work with on that stuff?
That's always been, of question, of concern. What are the franchise fees going to be as far as the, you have your upfront fee, which is, X amount of dollars, which I completely get. You have to be invested in order to do it. The franchisor has to know that you're personally invested. There's startup costs, there's build out costs, and then you have your monthly fees. With iSmash, the platform that they have put in place is fantastic, especially with only having, 10 or 12 locations open currently. And to speak to that, since I started talking to them in June of 24, they've sold over 100 franchises nationally. And so, it's coming on board in a big way. But the infrastructure that they give you, the roadmap, the platform, the details, has really been invaluable. Steven started this and he didn't have any of that. And it was, I think, trial and error on his part to figure out, where do I get the glass from? Where do I get my electronics from? And so he's put all those platforms, processes, the vision in place to allow the franchisees to be successful. And so it's been a huge help. And it's worth the fees that you pay to have that back end support to help prop you up.
Yeah. What was any of that negotiable when you were going through the process?
A little. Yeah.
A little.
Okay. If you were buying one set location, the franchise fee is X, but because we did multiple, then, we got a little help there. So the monthly fees are kind of set, but, you're not just paying just the fee, you're getting back end support on a daily basis to help you, with what you need to do to be able to run the business successfully.
Okay. So it's like a cost up front, a monthly fee, and a percentage, or what all do they?
No, the monthly, well, it depends. Like marketing, we have a monthly fee for marketing.
Okay.
But they do all of our social media, they do all of our visuals, all of our graphics, they do everything for us. So I could outsource it locally, but they take care of it.
Okay.
And then you have your royalties, which are the percentage of sales.
So that gives you a little more control over your local marketing doing that way. They still pay for it, but you get to kind of run it.
A little bit of both. We provide content to them and they will help manage the posts and that kind of thing. We try and get a ton of local content, specific to our store and our location. Yeah. And we provide that to them and then they'll do posts for us.
Can we get, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but an idea of what the costs are? The startup cost for a location, is it in the tens of thousands or is it in the hundreds?
Really, it depends on, it's going to be hundreds. It's a matter of how much.
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with how you're able to negotiate your lease with the landlord and finding the right spot for the right lease and how much they're willing to give you. If you sign a 10-year lease, we'll give you X amount to help with your build out. That's really where the negotiation comes, and picking the right spot with the right landlord who's willing to make the rents work and help you with your build out. That's the biggest.
Okay.
Probably the biggest thing up front initially.
So when you pay your initial franchise fee and you start setting up your location, are they the brand behind it, or do they help with any of the physical stuff? Like, the way you're built out, you have screens, you have all this stuff going on. Is that all on your cost, or does the franchise cover any of that?
It's on my cost. I pay for it, but they are very involved in having done multiple of these now. They know what the layout needs to look like. They know what the room sizes need to be. For example, we have 4 smash rooms in total. 2 hold or smaller, they hold 2 to 3 people. The third one is a medium sized room, I would say. It will hold 5 or 6 people comfortably. And then we have a big room, which will hold 12 to 15 people comfortably. So, that's something, if I was doing this brand new, I probably wouldn't have thought about that. Right. Having multiple different size rooms to accommodate different size groups. So they're very instrumental in the layout, the design, help from that perspective. The franchisee just has to pay for it.
Okay. So you went into this with the mindset of, if I'm doing this, I'm opening a bunch of locations. Is that where the value is in a franchise opposed to just settling on one location and trying to operate it?
Personally, I feel like it is. And also, kind of as I mentioned before, I like the growth. I like what comes with growing whatever. So, to go in and just say, I just want to run one location, I think after a period of time, I might, get a little, I might just get a little, I won't say bored, but, just the thought of growth and doing the research to find a location in Charlotte, find a location in Wilmington, find a location in Fayetteville or Asheville or Winston-Salem, wherever it may be. That's fun. And then putting together the plans and negotiating the leases and all that goes into that. While at the same time, when you start a company, even though it's a franchise, you're still starting a company. You're building a culture. I'm hopefully being a mentor to the people who work for me the way my mentor was when I was coming along.
Yeah. What were your goals going into this as far as how many locations did you think you want to have? And did that change after you've been operating your first one for a while?
Yeah, no, I would say 8 to 12, somewhere in there. I think Raleigh can support 2. I know Charlotte can support at least 2. And then you start saying, okay, where else do I want to go? We want to look at Wilmington. We're going to probably look at Durham, Fayetteville, Winston-Salem, Greensboro. Then you have to say, how far west do I want to go? Do I want to go to Asheville? Just logistically driving back and forth on a regular basis. Maybe not. We'll see. Obviously Charlotte's a huge market. There are a couple of other smash rooms there, but it's got the population to support multiple. Same with Raleigh. So yeah, it's mindset hadn't changed. Still interested in opening multiple.
Is your family involved with this? I know you mentioned your daughter was.
So a little bit. My son worked with us this summer. He's a senior at Hampton Sydney in Virginia. And so he did a management internship with us, really learned a lot about starting a company, starting a business, all that goes into it, the hiring, the site selection, the construction, everything that goes into starting a business and opening a business. He was there when we opened in May, worked with us throughout the summer. So it's been good from that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what we learned last week is that there's kind of some magic numbers whenever you open up multiple locations, and then how you structure your staff around that. What's your plan as far as at what point do you start hiring higher end managers or district managers, or are you just you enjoy the traveling back and forth and you're just gonna try keeping up with it yourself for a while?
Yeah, no, I probably did it a little different. I hired the person that I think, will hopefully continue to be a regional manager first.
Okay.
So he's been great. He's been in the retail space for 15 years. So he understands customer service. He knows how retail businesses work and run and what you need to do to be successful. So he's the first person I hired. Really, so we both could go through the learning process of how do you do the site selection? How do you open a store? What's involved? What do you need to do? So that when we go to open number 2, he's already been through it. I've already been through it. I've got a right-hand man that can help me manage those processes of opening number 2, doing the hiring. How do you lay out the storeroom? How do you do this? How do you do that? So I brought him on first. And, it's been a little more expensive, but it's been worth it.
Yeah. Interesting. What about hiring in general? You have to keep multiple people up there working, and it seems like one of those fun places that kids would like to work, but that's all seasonal, or you have a heavy turnover rate. How do you find people?
Yeah, for the most part, our staff has been fairly consistent. We've had a couple folks leave, pursue other opportunities, which is great. You want people to do what's best for them. But our core staff has been pretty consistent since day one. Thomas, our GM, Tom, our assistant GM. We've got several high school kids that work with us. Our busiest times are Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Sure.
And so, obviously they're not in school then, and they're able to work and want to work. So it fits our model. Our salaried employees are able to pretty much manage everything, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday day. And then we bring in the extra help on Friday evening and then Saturday and Sunday to support all of the opportunities, parties, events we have on the weekends. And we have a lot of corporate events during the week. We might bring some extra help in at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock after they're out of school. But the way our hours work, it aligns nicely with being able to utilize them to help us.
Yeah. Is you guys have a bar in your location? Is that typical across the board, or that location already had one, so you kept it? Like, what's the plan with that?
Yeah, so it's not typical. We're the only iSmash location thus far that has one. Okay. It was there before. It was a very prominent feature in the location.
Yep.
And so I really wanted to keep it and to try it and to see how it does, what impact it has on like corporate events and team building events and that type thing. We serve beer, wine, Prosecco, White Claws, no hard liquor.
Sure.
So it's been good. We'll have people come in. We had a group of ladies come in a few weeks ago that came in at noon on a Tuesday, had a glass of Prosecco, went in, smashed a bunch of stuff, came back out, had another glass, and then going to lunch, and we're making a day of it.
Yeah.
So it's fun. We get a lot of parents that come into the factory, and kids are playing hockey or they're at Tumble Gym, and they'll come in. We can live stream the hockey rinks.
Oh, nice.
So somebody wants to come in, and instead of sitting there and just reading a book or whatever, they come in, have a beer, watch a game, or watch their kid. We put it up on one of the big TVs, and they can watch their kid practice while just hanging out and having a beer.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
How was it to get corporate to agree to something that they weren't doing anywhere else?
They were fine with it.
Yeah.
One thing, they've always they've been open to ideas, to challenges. One thing that I like is, if I come up with an idea and it's something that they haven't done, more than likely they're going to say, give it a shot. If it's something they've done and it hadn't failed and it didn't work, they're like, you can try it, but here's what we've already done and here's why it didn't work. And normally it makes sense.
Yeah.
So they were open to it. Obviously insurance is a little more expensive versus not having a bar in a place where you smash stuff. But outside of that, it's been good.
Interesting. So I know there's so many different types of franchises, but some are like very strict. Like, you do this is what it costs. This is how you do it. This is how you run your employees. Was flexibility something talked about ahead of time? And was that something important that you were looking for?
Yeah, it is. There's a lot that isn't flexible, and
Right.
brand image, packages that you buy. A lot. There's a ton that's not. Sure. That happened to be one thing that they were, I won't say interested in, but they were open to the opportunity to try it, just because it was going to be just a trial run for other locations that might want to try it in the future.
What are your thoughts on it so far? Is it a help to the business, or?
It is, yeah. I think day in, day out, most folks come in, they do their session, and they leave. The factory is unique in the amount of foot traffic that it gets and the reason why people are there.
Right.
They've got the 2 hockey rinks, they've got the indoor soccer field, they've got the basketball courts, they've got Tumble Gym, they've got the golf simulator. So people are through there. The amount of people that come through is unbelievable.
Right.
So we have a lot of people that just come in and, are there and are killing time.
Sure.
And that was one of the reasons the axe throwing place had it before. So I wanted to keep it just to trial it from that perspective, in addition to how it's used for our clients that come in specifically for iSmash.
Well, what are some things that people might be interested to know that either went well or didn't go well about the whole process that you've been through with franchising so far?
Knock on wood, overall it's been very positive.
Yeah.
The corporate group was good to work with, reasonable. There were some things I asked for that, they didn't necessarily want to do, but for the most part, obviously it is extremely structured in what you do, how you have to do it, but they're not unreasonable. And so, overall it's been a good experience.
With the entrepreneurial mindset and the constant need to grow and change, do you find that a hindrance at all, being restricted, or is it kind of, you've been there, done that, now it's kind of a comfort to not have to? Yeah,
it's very helpful. The platform and the roadmap that they give you is extremely helpful, and it just allows you to do what you want to do much faster than what you would be able to if you were recreating it on your own.
Yeah.
If you tried to go out and, I don't know, open a hamburger joint, versus opening a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A, it has to be much, much more difficult to source your items and what are you going to serve and what's your menu and what's your pricing and where does it all come from. Has to be much more difficult to do that as a one-off versus doing a franchise.
Yeah. So you settled on iSmash. I'm sure they weren't the first franchise you stumbled upon and looked into. What are some things that you saw in other franchises that were like red flags or I don't want to be a part of that?
It wasn't necessarily, red flags. It was as probably, availability. Because I'd looked at oil change places and tires, discount tire shops.
Sure.
and those types of things. And it's just, the cost to open one, the real estate, you've got to be on a prime corner. If you're opening a McDonald's, you got to be on a prime corner. So iSmash is much more, I would say, of a destination than it is a drive-by. We get a lot of walk-in customers because we're at the factory, but most folks find us online or through social media and make a reservation, and so it's a destination to where they're coming. So it's a little different than, if I need an oil change and I'm driving down the road and I look and I say, oh, I'm over, I'm going to find the next oil change place probably if I've got time and just pull in there and do it.
Yeah.
Whereas with what we're doing, it is more of a destination than it is a drive-by.
Sure. Yeah. That's people always say, you want to print money, get into, car wash,
right?
But they're everywhere.
Yep.
And like you said, the startup cost on those, if you don't have $1 million in the bank, you're probably not going to make it happen.
Yep. If not more than that. I've got a friend who is in the car wash business, and it's north of that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That's cool.
For one of the full service ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
you have to have a prime location. You can't just put it in a hole somewhere and hope that it works. And you always have to have the newest technology, and it has to be nice and shiny and pretty,
yep.
That gets expensive. So, comparing your kind of prior career to what you're doing now, what are some things that you like more about what you're doing now, or like more about what you were doing before? Because I guess before you were more in the corporate world, right? I mean, I know you were still small business, but you're dealing with the corporate world every day, and now you kind of moved into the franchise, the small business.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a good question. It's a world of difference. You are dealing with independent individuals, I would say, on a day in, day out basis versus, negotiating corporate contracts, trying to go in and get a nursing home chain to switch from using whoever they might have been using as the pharmacy provider to you. It's the complaints are a lot less in this business. In the previous business, there were so many different moving parts and pieces where, you're servicing a nursing home. You've got nurses that reorder the medication. So Ms. Smith needs her blood pressure pill. Well, pharmacy didn't send the blood pressure pill. Why didn't the pharmacy send the blood pressure pill? Well, the nurse didn't tell us that she was out of it, And so you're dealing with those types of situations where your business depends on how people you don't employ do their part. And so that was probably the most difficult part of our previous, what we did prior. And one person can have a major impact on your overall business. If we serviced 100 buildings and 20 of them were owned by one company, that's a great thing when you get it. But it's also, if that group changes leadership and that leader has a preferred vendor, you could lose 20 just as fast as you got 20. And so, in this business, it's more of a one-off where obtaining customers is more difficult because you're trying to touch so many people, but at the same time, it's not necessarily as stressful because one person can have such a major impact on the other side.
Yeah, I think that's good. It's something that we deal with as well. Like what we're doing here now, it's a one-on-one thing. I get to interact with people and they can come and go and it's fine. But in one of our other businesses, we work with corporate clients, some of the largest corporations in the country. And it's like, we have to run our small business like a corporation or we're going to get ran over or we're going to lose it. And like the stress of trying to keep up with that, stay ahead of it, make sure that you're, kind of reading what they're doing and trying to move with them instead of in your own direction. And it's a lot to deal with on a daily basis.
It is. And, on that side of things, you're competing with Fortune 500 companies. Yeah. Like when we had our pharmacy, we were competing with Omnicare, who had all the resources in the world, but they were a direct competitor of us. Now they ended up purchasing us, which was great. But prior to that, we were operating with the resources we had, and they are operating with a Fortune 500 backing. So, it's a world of difference. And that's where the customer service became such a focus for us is, we're going to get you and do everything in our power and we're going to be here. And, with a national company, you get turnover, you get change, you get new faces that are in there. And, our customers kind of knew when we were running it that we were going to be there for them.
Yeah. I think if you're going to stay a small business and compete with, these larger companies or corporations, then making sure you have a niche is super important because you're not going to be able to just jump in and do everything like they do. You got to find something that they're missing and build up around that. How did you discover that?
Well, that was kind of where the second platform company came from, was a niche where we had been in the business. We knew that the whole delivery piece and the backup pharmacy concept was fragmented and disjointed. And so that was when we put MedCall in place to really close that loop. And so, for anybody who's entrepreneurial, I've told my kids and anybody else who's asked, when you get out of school, if you go to school, whether you go to a trade, whatever you end up doing, you've got to get out there and work for a while. You've got to go, work 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is you like to do. Go do it and learn that particular business, whether it's plumbing, whether it's pharmacy, whatever it may be. Through that course, if you're entrepreneurial, you're going to find gaps or holes in the process. And if you can figure out how to fix it, then you've got a pathway. And so, that's kind of my philosophy on how you become an entrepreneur is decide what it is that you like, go work, learn the business, and then find a problem and solve it.
100%. It's something we keep talking about here. It's like the businesses that succeed are solving a problem. Mm-hmm. The ones that tend not to are providing a service and they don't even know who the customers are.
Right.
Yeah. And I did that. We, like I said, my wife got a job up here and it was a great opportunity. I was like, take it. So I shut down everything in Wilmington that I spent years building a reputation, came up here and I was like, how do I start over? So that's what I did. I was like, I want to get into this industry. I went and worked for the largest company in that industry in our area, worked for them for a year, found my opening, found a niche, walked away from them, came back to work for them 8 months later as a contractor.
Nice.
Yeah. Fantastic. And it's like, it's that finding that niche, solving that problem. And that's where you find success. And I think that's the most important, one of the most important lessons in being an entrepreneur. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I like that. What are some lessons you've learned or mistakes you've avoided throughout your career?
Gosh. I guess trust but verify is one.
That's a good one.
Yeah. You always want to give people, I feel like, the benefit of the doubt. Take them at their word, but at the same time, do your homework and do your due diligence and verify that what they're saying is accurate and true. Is probably one of the bigger things that I've learned throughout my career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like interacting now with all these successful people and entrepreneurs. It's watching how the most successful people I know, watching them navigate. It's very different. It's like they're not in a hurry until it's time to go, mm-hmm. right? They take their time, they do their due diligence. The process seems slow in the beginning, but then when they hit the go button, it's time to move. And they get going and get momentum. It's hard to stop them. And it's something inspiring, and it's something that I've, learned from mistakes I've made, but then watching people operate over the years. And it's like, that's a good lesson to learn. Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. We've covered a whole lot of stuff. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about before we jump into a couple rapid fire?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite, Smash Room or Splatter Paint?
Gosh, I think Smash. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Just my personality, and it's fun. You pick up a coffee mug and just throw it as hard as you can at the metal wall, and it just shatters into a million pieces. Or you take a plate and throw it like a frisbee, and or take a baseball bat to a windshield. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that one. Corporate meetings or franchise chaos?
Franchise chaos. The corporate meetings are interesting, but probably, I don't know. There's a lot that could be done without.
Meetings to have about the meetings.
Yeah.
Growth or stability?
Growth. I like growing.
Build or buy? I personally like to build. I
I get buying as well, though. If you know what you're buying and you know the industry that you're going into, but I'm personally a builder.
Awesome. Tell us about where we can find you, your hours, where they should look you up, whatever you want to talk about.
So we're at the factory in Wake Forest. The one location in Charlotte's going to be off right off of Harris Boulevard on University City Boulevard over near UNC Charlotte. But in Wake Forest at the factory, we're open Tuesday to Sunday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're open 12 to 8. Friday, we're 12 to 10. Saturday, 11 to 10. Sunday, 11 to 7. We are open on major holidays on Monday. So like we'll be open Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. We're open on Labor Day and those type holidays. We're closed on Thanksgiving and Christmas, but we were open New Year's Day. But yeah, we'd love for anybody and everybody who's looking for something new, something fun, something different that you've probably not done before. Come check us out.
Awesome. It's a good time. I can verify that. All right. We're going to close it. We close every interview the same way. And it's because once I figured out my definition, it changed how I run my businesses and run my life. How do you define success?
I think personal satisfaction and being happy, being comfortable. Every business has challenges. Every business has days where you go home and, it's a bad day, but being content and happy, able to provide for your family, and, having a goal to continue pushing forward, is what I think success is. You don't have to be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos to be successful. It's being happy and content with what you're doing personally that makes success.
All right. That's a great way to end it then.
Cool.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
we
of course.
appreciate it. Enjoy it.